It's time to separate the contenders from the pretenders, and boy, did we learn a lot about Indiana this past weekend. It wasn't easy, but the Hoosiers stay unbeaten after battling with Penn State. Omar Cooper Jr. with the catch of the century to seal the deal for the number 2 team, but it came at a cost. It was the most points allowed all season by Indiana's defense. They now turn their attention to a Wisconsin squad with some momentum of their own, having taken down number 23 Washington in Luke Fickell's first AP win. And how about Texas Tech? The Raiders rallying to beat BYU 29-7, now off to their best 10-game start since 2008, their most wins since 2009. It sounds like that pricey roster is paying off, but where do they fall in terms of our college football playoff tiers list? Thankfully, our Cover 3 podcast crew has the answers. They join us now here in CBS Sports HQ. We've got Patterson and Tom Fornelli. Guys, we're going to break down the college football playoff contenders in terms of tiers. You guys have cultivated this list so well. We're going to take a look at the locks here for the CFP because I think between the three of us, there is no surprise that we will expect to see Ohio State, Indiana, and Texas A&M in that initial bracket. They have been the 3 best teams by far this season. So let's not waste any time. Let's get into the meat of the conversation and talk about some contenders in control, guys. These are the teams that kind of control their own destiny. So you see Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Oregon, Texas Tech. Tom, I'll come to you first on this. When we look back at this weekend and the results from some of these teams, how did this weekend's win, specifically for Tech and Oregon, impact where they fell in your tiers list?
Yeah, I think those were the two that clearly were defined by what we saw in results in the field. I mean, unless you really, really put a lot of weight in Ole Miss beating Citadel to start considering them a college football playoff contender. But Oregon going on the road, beating Iowa in those conditions, despite what they lost on offense with the injuries, I think is a big win for them because they do still have 2 very difficult games left on their schedule, getting USC and then having to go on the road to face Washington, which may have lost to Wisconsin this weekend, but is a much different team at home than they are on the road. So that gives them a little more breathing room. It also gives them a boost on their resume because that Iowa win will likely still look good at the end of the year. And as for Texas Tech, if you look at their final 2 games on their Big 12 schedule before they get to the Big 12 championship, it's UCF and West Virginia. Those are 2 of the teams that are near the bottom of the league as far as the standings are concerned. And it's really, really difficult to imagine that Texas Tech, given what they've done to everybody in this conference so far outside of that close loss on the road to Arizona State, is going to lose either one of those games, let alone both of them. So I feel like Texas Tech is already in the Big 12 championship. And even if they lose to, say, BYU while they're in there, they already have the win over BYU in the regular season. So that, I think, would still be enough to get them in as an at-large. So they have not clinched it yet like those other 3 teams at the very top. But I think Texas Tech is very close to doing so.
Yeah, I'm going to just follow right there on the Red Raiders because while I pushed back big time on trying to talk bracketology in October, I'll tell you what, I'll get into it now that we're in the middle of November because what Texas Tech is positioned to do, especially coming out of the BYU win, is perhaps lock up a home game for the first round. Because what we saw on Saturday was, yes, a Red Raiders defensive performance that was outstanding, but it's also a Red Raiders defense that has not allowed more than 17 points at home this year. The crowd was packed out. They were going absolutely bananas. And for Texas Tech, when you start to look at the way this is going to finally unfold, if they can handle their business, if they can win the Big 12 title, then we're talking about 5 seed, 4 seed, playing a game at home, 6 seed even, a favorable matchup. So Texas Tech coming out as a big winner because now they're positioning themselves not just to make the college football playoff, but to maybe even host a first-round game.
Let's get to that next tier. We're calling this no room for error. Error basically means you got to win out to be considered. We've got Notre Dame, Texas, OU, Vandy, BYU, USC, Michigan, Notre Dame in that mix there. A couple of these teams will be playing against each other, Chip, but in terms of this tier here, what stands out to you when we look at the college football playoff?
2 things. Number 1, I don't know if Texas is win or out, but they've got Georgia, they've got Texas A&M. They are one of the few teams who 9-3 might be able to be a path in. But you mentioned teams that are playing each other. What about a team on this list that has a game against one of our locks? What about those Michigan Wolverines? So I'm looking at them at 7-2, and they're the team that, as we're looking at the college football playoff picture, we're not talking about. But that game in Ann Arbor against Ohio State, boy, that is the clearest path towards being able to make the college football playoff as an at-large. The Wolverines need to take care of business against Northwestern in Wrigley Field. They're going to play Maryland, but as we look at the teams that are still alive, that is one that absolutely is got to win out. But winning out means beating Ohio State. So the Wolverines, they got to take care of business, but I'm keeping one eye on those Wolverines in the corner.
Yeah, I know there's some discussion about Texas getting in at 9-3 because it means they would have beaten either Georgia or Texas A&M in the final weeks of the season. But I would still focus on winning every single game because we have seen the committee talk about how they are going to consider strength of schedule this year far more than they have in the past. But what they have not specified is whether that will be to break tiebreakers between teams with the same records or if they're still going to look at a 2-loss team as a better option than a 3-loss team like we saw them do last year. So if there's a 10-2 Miami or there's a 10-2 Michigan or USC sitting around, I don't know if a 9-3 Texas's resume will be enough to put them in over those teams. So that's why I look at them and I have them in this no room for error tier.
A lot of conversation about the Longhorns, a lot of conversation about Miami this year as well. We go to our next tier, and that's where we're calling this the not dead yet tier. 2 teams that probably could be playoff teams, fellas, but right now they are on the outside looking in, Miami and Utah. Tom, what does the rest of the season look like for these 2 teams? Is there any hope for CFP, for the Canes, or for the Utes?
Yeah, with the teams in the last tier, I feel like if they win out, they are very likely in the college football playoff. These are 2 teams I think that could win out, finish 10-2, and still be left at home because they might just come up a little bit short and because of other teams that win conferences kind of take spots from them. But they are still very much in the picture if they're able to win out. It's just they need a lot of help. You look at Utah, their 2 losses right now are to Texas Tech and BYU. If they're 10-2 at the end of the year and their 2 losses are to the 2 of the top 10 teams in the country, they're going to get some credit for that. And Miami, obviously their losses are worse, but they also have a win over Notre Dame. So I feel like if you're the Miami Hurricanes, you not only need to win all of your games, but you kind of need Notre Dame to keep winning too, to prop up that win, to make you look better when it comes time to compare resumes. So I don't really like either's odds to get into the field, but they're still in as long as they don't lose again.
Yeah, that's who will emerge from the wreckage. The Miami Hurricanes have the best shot because they could have 10 wins. They could have a win over Notre Dame. They could very much be in the position to be a winner if there's total chaos and cannibalization everywhere else, especially in the SEC and the Big 12. But unfortunately, I think it also is going to require style points. And that's where a ground and pound Miami team might need to air it out and blow some teams out if they want to be able to get those, get the attention of the selection committee.
It has certainly been an experience with Carson Beck down here in South Florida.
It has.
We will keep our eye on what that experience turns into down the stretch. Fellas, always appreciate the time and the insight. More from Chip and Tom and the entire Cover 3 podcast crew can be found by scanning that QR code on your screen.